I think people, left, liberal, progressive, radical folks on TV have to figure out what they're trying to do. Is communicate to people who are persuadable or to push out the boundaries of the discourse. Those are both totally legitimate choices, but I think you got to kind of figure out what you're trying to do.
Hello, I'm Waleed Shahid, and Amir Hassan has abandoned me once again. You're listening to Block Party, a show about important things happening in the Democratic Party that Amir Hassan has chosen not to participate in to deliver solutions that match the scale of the problems that the American people face. Just kidding, love you, Amira. It's Aries month, her birthday, things are complicated, so you're stuck with me. And today we are talking about media and media literacy. I am the communications director for Justice Democrats, which means I've gone on TV a fair amount over the past few years, mostly on CNN, MSNBC, blah, blah, blah. And I play a character, and my character is the voice from the left, the Bernie bro, the AOC guy. And TV is wild. I used to get massive headaches my first couple times on TV, and then I realized, oh, I'm having an anxiety attack. Because what happens when you go on TV is that everybody is much wealthier than me, who I'm on TV with. Their clothes seem to fit them better and are much more shiny. Their teeth are shiny. Their hair is shiny. Everything is just so shiny. And so anyway, I don't know why I shared that. In order to achieve what I went on air to do, whether that's be animated and loud enough to create a important intervention on social media that people will share, or convince the audience of cable TV, which are mostly 55 and older, often more college educated, but not always, that progressives need to understand the terrain of cable TV. It's a very unique beast. You have to speak succinctly in 4 sentences. You have to explain your points very clearly and articulate, and then you also have to entertain. And you know some of the topics beforehand, but sometimes you're responding to what's happening in the conversation. Sophie, you might get mad at me for sharing this, but...
Why am I going to be mad at you?
Because it's going too long.
Oh, it's okay.
So, for example, one scenario that I did not anticipate happening is that during the Democratic primaries in 2020, I went on TV to talk about progressives. I was put on with a moderate Democrat. Me and him were supposed to debate about the policy agenda and the candidates in the Democratic primary running for president. And when I sit at my seat in studio, the host is reading a piece of paper and he goes, Waleed Shahid. Am I saying that right? And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, okay, young man, it's you, and Eliot Engel is coming on next to announce his support of impeachment. And I was like, we're primarying Eliot Engel. And he's like, oh, ha. So that must be why he wants to come on the show and announce impeachment, because he has a primary. And I was like, yes, exactly. And he was like, so whenever the Democrats do anything good and useful, should I thank you? And I was like, yes, you should thank me. And he goes, okay. He shuffles his papers around and he goes, look, kid, I just want you to know, I'm not really listening to what you have to say, and the other guest isn't really listening to what you have to say. So let's just have some fun. You know, say what you came here to say, and then we'll call it a night. And I'm like, this man is a multimillionaire on a multi-million-dollar broadcast network and is just phoning it in, folks. He's just phoning it in. I don't know if he's phoning it in, but I just thought it was wild to be like, yeah, no one's really listening on this platform that costs multi-millions of dollars. So let's just have some fun, kid.
Did you have fun?
I did, and the person I debated went on to become the chief of staff of the White House. So, and I'm still here, Sophie. So,
Amazing.
So anyway, it's a wild place. Today, I thought I'd bring on a few JD staffers to do some media literacy training and break down how broadcast television, cable television operates. We're going to play some clips from a CNN panel about student loan forgiveness and dissect it together and talk about the frameworks that each pundit is using from different sides of the aisle, figure out what's missing from the conversation, and then how to present that missing information more effectively. So here's the group chat, folks. Everyone, it's a very special block party. In the DMs today is Usamah Andrabi, candidate communications manager. He's a comms expert who does the kind of work that we're talking about on this show every day. And it'll be very useful to hear his takes and reactions to this panel we're about to discuss. We also have Becca Rose, who's a senior political associate, former comms op, and definitely a cop. Sophie Cap is also joining us. She is the pod producer for the wonderful Block Party show. Sophie is here as a layperson behind the scenes, unversed in political ops, although I think she knows a lot about politics but is hiding it from us to help us remember how normal people watch the news. So in the honor of Amira, who has abandoned me once again, this is a secret pop culture show. So we're going to start with, what are we watching on TV this week, folks?
I'm rewatching the first season of Yellow Jackets, which it is giving me incredibly bad vibes. Yes. It gives me the same level of stress that I got watching Uncut Gems, but I will continue to put myself through it.
Do you have a favorite character, Becca?
In Yellow Jackets?
Yeah.
I kind of hate them all.
All right. Usamah, what are you watching?
I'm watching everything. I've watched Yellow Jackets, I watched Succession, and I've been rewatching all of Mad Men.
We love it.
From the beginning, and there's truly no skips on that show.
It's true.
I will say one thing I forgot to mention in our intro is that Usamah and Becca, you both worked together at an unnamed, very prestigious PR firm where you two were the Disgusta Bros, I think. Right?
Yeah, we were classic Disgusted Bros.
Some might call it best large comms firm in the country.
Some might say it is awarded and known as that for sure. People have said.
All right, Sophie, what are you watching?
I started Yellow Jackets season 2. I thought it was a great start. It's going to be very culty. I am both terrified of the culty and excited for the culty to unravel.
Do you also hate everybody?
No, I kind of do like Lottie, but I think that's because you have influenced me.
Okay,
Team Lottie.
I actually was going to say that as I was sitting here thinking about it. I was like, you know what? If I had to pick someone, I think it would be Lottie.
It's not real, Becca. It's not real. Oh, that's a spoiler. I also wanted to mention that JD is now on TikTok because big tech algorithms has forced us to do reels to communicate our values and policy positions. Becca just did one on abortion. I did one, what did I do mine on? On ESG and Republican scapegoats. Usamah just put out his first one today. Usamah, do you want to share your experience of making a TikTok?
TikTok, I spend hours on it every day, but I have never had to create one, and I have truly never felt more like a fucking boomer in my life. I messaged Waleed and Becca, and I was like, how did y'all do this right? And they were like, yeah, don't fucking read the script. And I was like, what? How am I supposed to do without reading the script? And it took me all of last night.
And then it got taken down immediately after he posted it.
And then it got taken down immediately after I posted it.
Usamah, I have to remind you that you cannot curse during Ramzan.
Oh, that's so...
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not good at that
one. Usamah and Becca, I thought you did an amazing job on TikTok. People should check it out on TikTok, on Instagram, Justice Dems. So for the pod today, we are going to talk about cable TV, broadcast television, television news, because that is where a lot of people get their information. And there isn't that much progressive representation on cable TV, but we're going to have a discussion about how progressive should relate to the main way that people get their news. And so before we start, I wanted to talk a little bit about a basic communications messaging principle, which is framing. Frames are mental structures that allow us to interpret the world and make meaning. Frames are unconscious and automatic. Everyone brings framing to how they talk about literally anything. Frames set the terms of debate and dictate what is and what isn't a part of the story. So I wanted to ask you all, as we're doing this discussion, what are the two dominant frames in the abortion debate?
Usamah.
I would say the two dominant frames are pro-choice and anti-choice, rather than pro-choice and pro-life, because that is the right-wing frame. But
so true.
You're getting too advanced, Usamah. Just give us the basics. Give us the way that most people think about it.
Those are the basics. Those are the basics, all right? That's the messaging war. We want it.
We don't have to use the terms of the opposition.
Wow, this is already a rebellious panel. Too woke and too advanced. So what can you tell me in terms of pro-life, like what are the values associated with that frame from their point of view?
I was going to say like taking away people's rights, controlling people.
I want you to be a Republican operative. Like what are the values of the pro-life?
Their values are like a belief in the, quote, sanctity of life of a non-living being. And I would say that's their big thing that they apply to everything. They usually apply a freedom mindset to their takes, but not to this. Mm-hmm. And then the pro-choice side is much more pro reproductive freedom, pro the choice to control your own body, make choices about your own healthcare, your reproductive rights between you and your doctor, and not have the influence or interference of the government.
The point of just bringing this up is that both sides have their own frame that highlight their values and also distance or make alien the other value, and they don't really speak to each other. So one frame is about life being sacred, as Usamah said. The other frame is about freedom and choice. And the whole discussion and the whole ideological debate is about dictating the terms of what is and what isn't going to be talked about. And so typically the pro-choice side will not talk about this sacredness of life, and the pro-life side will typically not talk about the rights or freedom framework because of the way the frames are operating. The reason I bring this up is because we are going to watch a CNN panel right now about student debt cancellation, in which frames are being thrown out by everybody on the panel. And so much of cable TV and broadcast television, because everything is done in 1 minute, 90-second, 2-minute sound bites, the frames are really important because you can only communicate so much in a certain amount of time. So I want to dig into what frames people are using to talk about student debt on CNN and what is being elevated through that kind of talking and what's being ignored or neglected. So everybody ready? All right, here we go.
I have to ask, when you think about this, why are you already smirking? What's happening right now? Hold on, I didn't have to put, just tell me why you're smirking. Go ahead, what is your reaction?
Oh, to the student loan debacle?
Oh, is
the
it,
disgrace?
Is it a debacle?
The president
there you go.
I mean, well, where do I start? It's inflationary, it's illegal, it's immoral, it's irrational, it's idiotic, it's inequitable, and those are just the things that start with the letter I. I mean, I could go on to other letters in the alphabet. I think that what he did today is a direct reaction to the fact that young Democrats, in all the polling we've seen, hate Joe Biden. They're done with Joe Biden, and he's sending them all a $10,000 check in an effort to buy their support. Even Nancy Pelosi, who I'm not often aligned with, as you know, stated on the record unequivocally that this is illegal. The President of the United States does not have the authority to do this. And the final question is, there is no world where you would consider this to be fair. What makes this debt more righteous than the small plumber who took out a loan to buy a new van, or the person who got a mortgage, or the person who got a loan to buy a car so they could drive themselves back and forth to work? Or what makes it fair to the person who paid off their debts, to the parent who just wrote the last check for their son or daughter to go to college? There's no world in which this isn't a cynical political ploy by an elderly president trying to buy the votes of the youngest people.
Okay, I'm going to pause the clip right there. I don't want you to criticize what he's saying. I just want you to tell me what he's doing. What are the frames he's using to oppose student debt forgiveness? Let's get in his head.
He says the word illegal a lot. I feel like he's just trying to frame it as it's not allowed. That's it. End of story. Kind of finality.
Yeah, there's like a core question of, quote, fairness.
Yeah, it's completely avoids any talk about what this can do for any real people or how it can benefit those voters, and it's just
wait,
on...
Usamah, no criticizing.
Too advanced.
That's not criticizing? I thought that's what he's not doing.
Let's say what he is doing.
So he's focusing on just dismissing it as illegal and dismissing it as a political ploy more than any kind of feasible policy solution to a problem he doesn't define.
It's illegal, it's unfair, and it's all about politics. It's all about Biden getting reelected. All right, the other thing I wanted to talk about in this, TV is also not just like what you say, but how you say it and how you deliver it. And I kind of wanted to talk about some of the other things happening here that are not just what he's saying, but how he's saying it. So how he delivered his points, his tone, how he's carrying himself, etc., etc. If you notice anything.
Homeboy is popping off.
Yes, he is. He's angry.
He's feeling dramatic.
Yeah, he's just trying to ruffle some feathers.
Yeah, very much making this seem like one of the most absurd things that a president has ever done. It's just like, how could we ever do this? Like, this makes no sense.
He's very emotive. He's very emotional. Anything else you're noticing?
He just is belittling the fact that the conversation's happening, even with the tone.
Very dismissive.
The reason I brought this up is because a friend of the pod, Karl Rove, who is a Republican strategist, most famous for getting George W. Bush elected, he said this thing once where he was like, I can see who's winning a debate on TV by muting it. Because he's like, it doesn't really matter what someone says, it matters how they say it, which is totally, it's pretty unhinged, but so much of this kind of stuff is about not just what you say, but the emotions you're carrying and the tone you're delivering, which is usually set up for the person yelling.
Yeah, interesting.
I was going to say, I also think that is extremely gendered and racial, and that, like, you mute it on this guy and you're like, that guy is winning an argument. And if you do that on a black woman or a black man, you're like, that person's crazy. They're fucking angry, and they're saying something probably socialist.
I think we're also obviously all biased here, but yeah, I don't know. Listening to...
I'm not biased. Okay. I have no biases.
You're right. A true Aquarius. I get like secondhand embarrassment watching this man speak, where I'm like, you sound so crazy. And maybe that is just like being a woman. If I showed up to a room and spoke like that, people would... it's just easy to brush you off. But I'm not a white man with a Southern accent and a tie, so...
Do you want to guess what the average audience is, the demographics of the audience of CNN?
Middle-aged white women?
People above the age of 50?
Yeah, it's mostly people 55 and up. It's pretty diverse racially, but it is 55 and up. And most people don't have a college degree who are watching CNN. So...
Is that true of all broadcast news?
MSNBC's audience is much wider, and more women watch MSNBC and more college educated than CNN. But just so you know that we are not the target audience for this panel. It is mostly the olds. But okay, I want to get into the response to this. So you've got the right-wing Republican person. That was his argument about why student loan forgiveness is unjust or stupid. And now here's the Democratic and center-left response.
You know, shocker that a Republican would be against something that a Democratic president is doing that is wildly popular at a time when Democrats are gaining momentum going into the midterm election, showing that it is yet another promise kept by this president. And by the way, it was a promise that he made to voters, to constituents, not just young people, but yes, young people during the campaign. He didn't just come up with this. And by the way, it's rich that Republicans are talking about fairness when they have passed billions and billions of dollars in corporate tax cuts, in corporate socialism, and now they're talking about fairness? Give me an effing break.
Okay. Again, no criticism, but what is this? What is the Democratic center-left response to Biden's student loan forgiveness plan? How is she framing it?
I feel like she's still responding to the right-wing frame of whether or not it's fair, but she's like trying to justify its fairness.
I mean, she also kind of belittles him right back. It's a reactionary kind of response, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like she's just in the same frame as him. She's saying it's a lot of like, no, it is actually politically good. This was a promise he made. This is not a new thing. And then moving on to be like, Republicans did this thing. It's just refuting his negatives and then doing Republican negatives without saying any kind of the positives about the plan itself.
Yeah, it's highly partisan. Like, both of them are engaged in kind of, is this good for Biden? Is this bad for Biden? Is this a Republican thing? Is this a Democratic thing? Which we're going to talk about later, about how a lot of cable TV is set up about partisan conflict. Because you want people to fight on TV, so more people watch. Conflict gets views. Also, to dig into your points there, between both of these people, where are people with student debt in their framing? People who are struggling with student debt payments?
Nowhere. It just feels very political and very partisan, like you were saying, I guess. And no one's really speaking to the experiences of people with student loans.
We heard about plumbers with loans, but we didn't hear about...
Totally the same, by the way.
Yeah, exactly the same. But we didn't really hear about students. And we heard about students' parents, I think, but not the people themselves that hold the debt.
And then I'm going to go into body language also and like tone. Same thing with this pundit.
I mean, she's ruffled. He wanted to ruffle some feathers. And I feel like he kind of succeeded, which is maybe like good, I guess, is what we were saying for broadcast news, but embarrassing on a personal level. She brings not exactly the same tone as him, but she's definitely emotive.
I love where the screen paused also.
Yeah, that is, I think, a summation of what the two things were. Was smug versus we're friends, but we disagree.
Yeah, there was a little bit of, this is very common on cable TV, is like the chumminess with the guest you hate, which you also noticed at the beginning where they were kind of tapping each other. But who do you think won between these two, or convinced more people?
The Republican.
Probably the Republican.
Why?
I just think his points were more concise and clear. It was like a laundry list of I words that were pretty easy to remember, and hers just were responding to him, not giving anything new, and then started talking about other things Republicans do, which would maybe make you feel like, oh, Republicans are disingenuous, but does not invalidate student debt critiques.
Okay, just to be like devil's advocate a little bit, I just feel like it's red flag number one when that man is so theatrical. Like, he's a con man, you know? I'm like, you're selling me snake oil. If you're giving your little laundry list of I words, I'm immediately like, you have nothing of substance to say to me. Goodbye. But I'm not the core CNN demographic, so.
As the lay person, I think the Republican won.
Damn it, Sophie.
Sorry, Becca.
Why?
I mean, it's sort of just all Usamah said. If I didn't know anything about this at all, he gave me hard facts, quote, like hard quote, but she didn't give me any new information. And I feel like when you're watching this panel, you're looking for pieces of information to go tell your friends at your brunch party on the golf course the next morning or something. And I would have the I statements to like say again and verbalize to somebody in my daily life. I would not have anything from this woman, unfortunately.
He gave you no facts, but he sold it the hardest, is what you're telling me.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, sound bites. I also think the Republican won this little skirmish because his frame dominated the debate. Like, she responded entirely to his frame. And, you know, it's easier to set the frame when you go first, obviously, but I felt like she's totally debating the topic within his frame. And I think that is something that on TV in political debates is something that is really important to notice. So we have 3 votes for the Republican winning, and Becca is sticking up for the Democrats. Appreciate it,
I want to
Becca.
believe that people are smarter than this man.
Okay, so I'm going to keep going. So we have a friendly moderator here who brings up another point.
No, excuse me, before I get there, though, I want to point out this, and this will infuse the conversation, because we're talking about equity and fairness. We know part of the Biden administration has been about intergenerational wealth and fairness, particularly in communities of color. And I want to take a pause, and we mentioned the student debt plan, but I want to look at who it will actually impact. I mean, look at the screen there. Biden says it's going to help ease the pain in communities who are most hampered by debt, racial minorities, but the NAACP, maybe to a different point, says that it's not enough. And they say, quote, canceling just $10,000 of debt is like pouring a bucket of ice water on a forest fire. It hardly achieves anything, only making a mere dent in the problem. And we know the problem is vast. You got federal student loan debt now standing in the U.S. at around $1.6 trillion. There was a model from the Urban Institute that showed that 62% of the canceled student loan dollars would go to white borrowers versus the 25% that would go toward black borrowers, 8% for Hispanic borrowers. Now look a little closer, and it's black women, I'm pointing at myself, who hold the majority of student debt. Shouldn't come as a surprise. We see Americans, people of color, who must spend way more for a chance at the American dream. The Brookings analysis showed that black college graduates owe $7,400 more just on average than their white peers. And take into account differences in interest accrual and graduate school borrowing, well, then you're talking about black graduates ending up holding nearly $53,000 in student loan debt after graduating. It's almost twice as much as their white counterparts. Now, I bring that up in the panel and have that moment because you're talking about fairness, right? And we know that at times we compartmentalize when equity ought to be doled out, but equality is not like pie, right? You don't get less because I get a piece.
Right.
So I just want quick responses to what the moderator is doing here.
I feel like she's reframing or attempting to reframe the conversation. Rooted back in actual people and start to talk about how this is a start to a solution and it's not even a full solution, really.
Yeah, and just focusing on who the plan helps the most / who it excludes.
She's injecting both real borrowers into the thing and also like structural racism into the debate into the frame around fairness, which was not brought up by the other two panelists. It's actually, this is very good moderation that you don't see that much on cable TV. And it's, to me, it's like a little embarrassing that she has to do this because the role of the pundit is to do what she's doing. And she's like, okay, let's like talk about real people.
It's like, say something real.
Yeah, Usamah, I don't know. Did you want to, I don't know if you had any responses to this.
No, I agree. I feel like exactly what everyone else is saying. She's kind of just like, okay, let's talk about who this actually impacts and what that looks like. And maybe we can like have fair critiques about who's left behind and who's not. And like, maybe that's where the debate should be, is talking about who we can help and to what extent, and not whether this is politically advantageous or disadvantageous to either party.
Also, to your point, Waleed, about her doing what the pundits should be doing, she like literally personalizes the issue where she's like, I'm pointing at myself here, talking about Black women holding the most debt. And yeah, just neither of the pundits have had anything to say about the human experience. She has more, there's more pathos in her argument than either of the pundits.
Well, Becca, that's an excellent point. I don't want to make any assumptions by anyone on this panel, but most people you see on TV are making six figures, 7 figures. So,
can't relate. Not relate.
Yes, they're all up there in their income and wealth bracket. All right. So this is how the Republican responds to what the moderator is prompting.
How does that change? Does it change or influence you at all?
Oh, I think some of these things are extremely fair, and I think every time you peel a layer back, like you just did on the difference between white borrowers and African American borrowers, you see how little thought was put into this. But the part of Joe Biden's political base that he is most worried about are these young, white, privileged, liberal, gender studies majors who are so unhappy with him. None of them want to support this guy for president again. That's who he's writing a check to today. It is simply trying to buy off the people who he can't get today in the current polling and taking for granted everybody you just mentioned. And I can't believe that I'm the only person at this table who isn't more bothered by the fact that this is totally illegal. There is no authority for the president to do this at all. And Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democrat leader today, said, with the flick of a pen, Joe Biden has ... Why even have a Congress?
All right. How did our guy do?
It's always those damn gender studies majors, am I right?
Well, what's the political purpose? Why is he doing that? Tell me about his framing.
I mean, it's inflammatory.
Yeah, it's a good response from him to be like, yeah, look at who he's leaving behind. This is so poorly planned. This is so dumb. And also, we hate gay and trans people, right? Just FYI, as a reminder. And like, that's who we're helping here. We're not helping Black people. We're not helping poor Black people. We're not helping poor white people. We're not helping anyone who's poor. We're just helping rich LGBTQ people. And that's the problem. They're taking all of our resources away when we should be having it. And the plumber who needs his loan forgiven is not going to get his loan forgiven.
Look at these Democrats being the party of the elite, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, it's amazingly such a cynical response because he's like, I agree that Black borrowers are being left behind, and that's why we should cancel nobody's debt.
Right.
Like, that's the conclusion.
So true.
Because it's illegal. And he's like, that's why we can't cancel anyone, because it's illegal.
I see you being left behind, and I'm going to do nothing for you.
But the passion is, like, incredible. He's like, yes, it is unfair to people like you.
The passion really distracts from him being, he's like, yes, I see Black borrowers being left behind. And that like really distracts from the point of what he's actually saying, which is what you just said, Waleed, where he's like, and again, this is illegal, and so we should cancel no one's debt.
I think Republicans are very good at hiding their true positions. Like, he is not he's not exactly saying what he believes. He's just, it's really good messaging where it's like, it's like kind of whataboutism. And so we're going to end the panel with her response to him, the Democratic response to him.
Why even have a Congress? Where is the co-equal or more important branch of government in all this? I am
Because
stunned.
for so long, Congress, Republicans specifically, has said no on any kind of policy that would give any kind of equity to the American people, especially those who need it the most. And I think it's insulting, Scott, that you say that this policy will not help Black students, will not help Latino students.
I didn't.
know
She
a
said it. I
bunch-
didn't say it. She
No,
laid it out.
I didn't say it. I read you the
You
facts.
just gave a very compelling report.
I read you the
but
reports of what
you
happened.
said that this would only help white students that are studying gender studies, whatever that means. I don't know. It sounds insulting because
It is insulting. I'm insulted.
People in my
By gender studies?
people in my community, people in Laura's community, people in many communities, including white people, will benefit from this. That's why it is equitable. Laura, is it the be-all and end-all? No, but it will be a step in the right direction. We need to reform the way that we send our students to school. When my parents brought us to this country, it was because we had this dream of being able to do anything you wanted if you studied hard, if you played by the rules. And my parents were able to send us to college because of the opportunities in this country. I want everyone to have that, and apparently Republicans don't.
I mean, Scott really stays winning. Is that his name, Scott?
I forget. Yeah, Scott Jennings.
It felt right. Just because she starts out her argument saying basically Republicans have forced our hand on this and like Joe Biden can do this with, quote, the flick of a pen because Republicans have said no to equity for so long. And I feel like that's just like she's really stuck in his framing and just defending why they're allowed to do this without really, I think she kind of gets closer when she's saying people in many communities will benefit from this and everyone should have the opportunity to go to college, etc., when she's talking about her personal experience. But she really starts out with defending why they're allowed to do this or why Joe Biden can do this. Just very reactionary still.
I feel like she kind of made a well, I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think. If it was a mistake for her to do the gender studies, whatever that means. That's just an opening for this conversation.
And then the moderator, yeah.
Yeah, they both did it, where they were both all of a sudden shifting again away from student debt.
Scott's like, the more we talk about gender studies, the better.
Yeah.
The more
Like,
I win.
keep saying my
Exactly.
points for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought she did a good job closing when she kind of brought it more to values at the end, but like she spent you only get 60 seconds to respond, and so I think to me she spent 30 seconds kind of repeating what he had already just said, which is
At
you don't
least,
need
yeah.
to do. Usamah, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I fucking agree. I like for the first 15 seconds, I was like, what are you saying? She's just like, Republicans don't want to do anything about equity. They've never done it. I was like, this does not mean anything to anyone. This man is talking about, yes, it's bad that black women are not getting their debt forgiven. And you're like, Republicans aren't doing equity. And it's like, get it together. And then she falls into his trap, talks about gender studies. And then she gets better. I agree. Once she circles back to her own narrative, brings her story in, talks about her shit, and then expands it. This is not good enough. Obviously, we need to do more. And she also just, I mean, there's just like very easy ways to refute some of his points, and it's so frustrating, especially this illegal frame.
Yes, let's get into it. So now I'm like, Usamah, Becca, Sophie, if you were on this panel or if you were training a candidate, somebody to be on this panel, well, how would you go about this debate, especially with the way that Scott started it out?
I mean, Scott is triggering. I'm not going to lie. You do want to be like, Scott, you're full of shit. Get out of here with your illegal bullshit. But I think because you are so limited on time, I would just say ignore and just lead with your own values, because there's not a lot of time to refute what Scott is saying and make a convincing argument.
Yeah, so if Scott starts with the frame of it's political, it's illegal, it's unfair, Usamah, what would you train a Summerlee to say?
I don't train a Summerlee to say anything. Summerlee says what she got to say.
What would you train a Usamah to say?
We stand.
I think, like, I mean, I don't want to fall into his frame. I think you can be like, this is bullshit. This is how many people have student debt in this country, and this is how many people would be served by this. Black women have more student debt than anyone in this country, and 40% of people with student debt don't even have a college degree to show for it. So they've gotten nothing from this debt. And to the only point that Scott has, which is it is illegal, it is not illegal. The HEROES Act of 2003 gives the president the ability to sign an executive order relieving debt in an emergency, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. And so at no point, like, I don't want to fall into his frame, but you can just say that and be like, yes, it is legal. Here's a bill that Congress passed, actually, that you were talking about, that gives the president the authority to do this, but let's still talk about the people that are actually going to be helped here, people like me, which is what Summerlee says, and brings her own story into this.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting to me about this whole discussion is that student debt cancellation, the origins of it, which we've talked a lot about on this pod, really gets amplified by the Occupy Wall Street movement and then becomes a big part of the Bernie campaign. Hillary ends up taking up some of it in 2016. But it's really a progressive cause and progressive demand that ascended to the mainstream Democratic Party establishment. And so now it's like progressives having to defend what is now the mainstream Democratic Joe Biden moderate position. And it's clear to me that the Democratic pundit on this panel, she's not really well versed in the cause because it's not like a mainstream Democratic cause. It's a progressive thing that became a mainstream Democratic cause after years of agitation and building. And so I feel like that's also part of it. You are kind of witnessing in real time the like awkward, like, I guess we got to figure out how to defend student loan cancellation now, and we don't really know how. Yeah, exactly. Well, so their job, a lot of the pundits, their job, if you're a Democratic pundit, is just to defend what the Democrats do. And progressives, our job is to make the Democratic positions what they are. But I don't know, I feel like, Usamah, you gave a very like rational, factual rebuttal. And I'm like, is there anything beyond the facts that you think is relevant to share that's going to be important there? What else could we be thinking about in terms of framing? And this is for anybody.
I mean, I think there's like an element of sharing what our values are as progressives, which is everyone should have the freedom to be able to build the future that you want for yourself and for your family. And for better or for worse, a college education is like essential for a lot of jobs, and higher education is also only really available to wealthy people unless you want to have crippling debt for the rest of your life. And so we should break down a lot of those barriers and create a path to prosperity for all people, regardless of what job you choose.
I think that's really smart. It reminds me of in 2016, I saw Bernie speak, and like the way that he talked about student debt forgiveness was like all about fairness. I think he said something along the lines of young people in this country are told their entire lives that to succeed and move ahead, that they need to go to college. And then you're saddled with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, doing what everyone in your life has told you that you need to do. And what is fair about that? Yeah. I think that is that seemed like missing in this discussion. That's just such a common sense thing that everybody feels, which is, Becca, exactly what you're saying. You are told that to be in the middle class, you need to go to college. And so why wouldn't we make that easier for people? Or why would we make that so hard for people to do?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sophie, Usamah, Becca, for participating in this media literacy training with me. You guys did an amazing job. We all learned about framing today. When we come back after the break, we're going to zoom out a little bit and talk about cable TV in general. And we're going to break down some of the things that were happening on that student debt panel as part of how cable TV operates in general. So stay tuned. A fun treat for our listeners on the block is that I used all my political capital on getting people who either appear on cable news, broadcast news, or work with people who appear on cable news to tell us their tips or experiences or criticisms of television news. So we're going to hear from Joe Covello, who worked on the Fetterman campaign and Bernie campaign, Rebecca Katz, who worked on the Jamal Bowman campaign and also the Fetterman campaign. From across the pond, from England, we're going to hear from Grace Blakely, who appears pretty regularly on the BBC. We're going to hear from Matthew Butcher, who does comms for Neon, which is a great organization also in the UK. Then we're going to hear from Francesca Fiorentini, who is a comedian and also a pundit on MSNBC sometimes. And then we're going to hear from host of All In, weekdays, 8 p.m., MSNBC, Chris Hayes. All right, let's go.
So I'm a big believer in the power of local broadcast news. People know and trust their local anchors. They know and trust their local news. So when we communicate our message via this medium, it's going to stick.
It's a weird thing because you think about cable news and you think not that many of your friends might watch cable news. But that doesn't mean that progressives should be counting it out. In fact, voters, by and large, watch cable in pretty good numbers, especially the older voters. And progressives, I believe, could be reaching more voters if we were better at TV.
It's easy as progressives, I think, to focus on the intellectual integrity of our message and think about how we can make our arguments as kind of sound as possible.
Progressives are very good at coming into an interview with a core set of beliefs. No one has to tell us what we believe. We know what we believe. But progressives are also terrible at coming to an interview prepared with sound bites.
The things that people are going to remember from what they hear you say are not, statistics or very well-reasoned arguments. They'll be remembering a few sound bites. And if you can just repeat those sound bites over and over, and this is what the right is so good at doing, then they stick in people's minds. And that is really what you want to have as your aim going into anything.
The best way to succeed on cable TV is to come with something interesting to say, and say it because everyone might expect you to go one way, but it's good to surprise people.
It often is a chance for people who are progressives to actually put across a little bit of personality. And if we do it well with good humour and get our key messages across, we can often surprise people and come across not as the kind of dour, overly serious, boring people that people might think that we are.
I think the thing that the left needs to understand, and this is something I had to learn when I moved from being an activist to being, as I call it, on the propaganda team of the Rev, doing online news and analysis and comedy and also broadcast television, is that if you're not accessible, there's no reason for you to be talking. I had to unlearn so much of my activist speak and my academic speak. I think that the left doesn't understand how to speak in a way that actually speaks to masses of people, and just by simply changing their language, it's going to be a little more direct, a little crasser, and they're going to say it with conviction, and it will be concise and digestible.
I think people, left, liberal, progressive, radical folks on TV have to figure out what they're trying to do is communicate to people who are persuadable or to push out the boundaries of the discourse. Those are very different rhetorical modes. The latter might alienate people, but you might think that alienation is kind of good because you're saying things on TV that haven't been said before, and you maybe create some space, but that might be in tension with using language that will not seem alienating to folks you're trying to persuade. Those are both totally legitimate choices, but I think you got to kind of figure out what you're trying to do.
The last thing I'll say about local news is these anchors, these reporters, they're honest people, they're hardworking people. Work with them, convince them, and tell them why whatever you're pitching or your candidate or your cause is important to the community. Put it in that lens. There's a good chance they'll listen. That's it for me.
Progressives are more underestimated probably than any other group on television. So good luck.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Good fucking luck.
Be interesting, surprise people, be crass. That's what I got, folks.
I'm at least one of those things.
This is what I'm saying. The strategy is just be for real, and that's it.
Thank you to Joe, Rebecca, Grace, Matthew, Francesca, Chris, and then Joe again, and then Rebecca again. Stay tuned for part 2. Welcome back to the group chat, everybody. So we're going to zoom out a little bit. We just discussed a panel about student debt forgiveness on CNN, and zooming out, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the fuck is typically happening on cable TV. So to start, there is an amazing explainer video by Carlos Maza from a couple years ago that I think anyone who engages with the media or TV or consumes TV media should watch. I'm really curious what your responses are to this based on your own experiences. And yeah, Sophie, do you want to play the clip?
Yes, here we go.
I have watched hours of segments about the Green New Deal, and none of them actually explained how it might work. Instead, they focused on the politics. Is it gonna pass? Does Pelosi like it? What did Trump tweet about it? Everything except, is it a good idea? Turns out there's a name for this type of news coverage. It's called tactical framing, an approach to news coverage that focuses on strategy over substance. So instead of asking, is this new policy proposal a good idea, tactical framing asks, is it popular? Can it pass? How will it play in the next election?
The discussion is focused on the players and the implications for them and their political careers, not the policy or its capacity to solve a problem.
Kathleen Hall Jamieson coined the phrase tactical framing, and she argues that this obsession with strategy is making it hard for us to understand big policy ideas.
Ask yourself how much of the coverage of the Green New Deal has told you what specifically is in it.
This framing makes us less informed, but it also makes us more cynical. Now, maybe your reaction is, so what? Of course watching the news makes you cynical. Congress is too gridlocked to get anything done. But tactical framing makes it harder to break that gridlock by causing us to look at policy through a partisan lens.
Most of the time, we're not partisans. I know that sounds surprising, but most of the time we're not. But I can activate my sense of my partisanship and the partisanship of an audience by focusing on a frame that makes that more important.
The point of political journalism should be to snap us out of our cynicism, to remind us of the magnitude of the problems we face.
Most people who are thinking about their children right now, I'm sorry I'm getting emotional, but this is an emergency in this country. It's an emergency on this planet.
And to teach us what our options might be.
Is the new Green Deal going to solve the problem?
We can't say it's too aspirational, it's the planet.
That's a really important conversation. Our planet depends on it, but it's one that gets shut down every time a newsroom decides to focus on tactics.
So, did we see tactical framing in the student debt panel?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Very much so.
Everything that came out of Scott's mouth, pretty much.
Well, not just Scott, I don't think.
Yeah, but I mean, I think everyone was like operating
right
in his kind of framework, and so he set the standard.
Yeah. So what was his tactical frame?
That it's unpopular and illegal and unfair. And he does say it would be ineffective.
And also talks about this is just a political move. The midterms are coming up, or I don't know if he mentioned the midterms in this clip, but this is a political move for the base. He's
like, young people hate Joe Biden, so he's doing this.
He's trying to give them something, which is not about the thing itself. It's about the politics.
Can you sense how that would breed cynicism?
I guess it makes it seem like, he literally does say Joe Biden is writing a check to voters, like it's some kind of bribe or buy off, instead of like, this is your president doing something for working people or whatever the message would be. He makes it seem like there's some kind of malicious intent or he's doing something politically shady.
Yeah. Usamah, you work with candidates one-on-one. Do you deal with tactical framing? How do you try to navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously. And I just want to point out that I do feel like tactical framing is a thing that the Democratic Party uses against themselves a lot more than the Republican Party ever uses because they are smart and we are not.
Wait, can you say more about that?
I mean, I just think like Republicans are very good at actually putting forward the very scary things that they want to show you could happen in the world and what should not be happening in the world. And they are not talking about whether something is going to pass a filibuster or if we have enough votes in Congress. They don't give a shit about what's going on. They're just like, this is a fucking thing. You guys should all be freaking out. You guys should be going to these drag brunches and protesting. You know, it doesn't matter what we can or cannot do in Congress. Whereas Democrats are like, do we have votes to pass Medicare for all? Is it even feasible? How do we do that? And I think for candidates in our world and progressive candidates who are trying to actually pass legislation like that, it's saying exactly what Heather McGhee was saying in this clip, which is this is the planet. We cannot wonder whether or not this is politically feasible or we have the votes in Congress. We need to talk about what the problem is and what the solution is. And the Green New Deal is the solution to our climate crisis. And here's why. And here are the things that would happen to us if we don't do the Green New Deal. And that's kind of the impact of showing what happens when we don't pass a policy rather than what is stopping us in these archaic institutions that we're a part of.
I also, to your point about Democrats like weaponizing tactical framing against themselves, I don't know if this originates from broadcast news and voters just absorb it subconsciously, but I feel like that's how a lot of Democratic voters vote in primaries. They use that same kind of framing of, oh, well, I like this person, but I don't think they can win against a Republican, and so I won't vote for them.
Electability.
And I just think, exactly, yeah. And it's that same kind of tactical framing that we see a lot on cable news.
Why do you think cable news or just broadcast news in general is why they do this?
Because they're evil. Just kidding.
like why this is their way of getting information?
Yeah, why is this their dominant frame? Why is this their dominant frame of coverage?
I think it's to serve their own interests. I think what helps them the most are not people hearing very substantive policy debates about how to solve the problems in our country. People are not interested in that because they've been primed by broadcast television to be much more interested in a fucking street fight between Republicans and Democrats, and are just like, what's partisan? Who's on what side? Who's stopping Democrats from being good Democrats? It's progressives. Progressives are doing this crazy fucking shit, or Republicans are doing this crazy fucking shit to stop us from doing this, and we can't let them do that. And it just kind of feeds the hamster wheel, not to also exclude the fact that all these groups are owned by large corporate conglomerates that are very self-interested and don't want any of these policy debates to happen because they are oppositional to them.
Yeah, it seems like it's probably just the easiest to digest for viewers versus having an actual substantive, nuanced conversation does not make for fun little sound bites and stories that are maybe anywhere from the range of 40 seconds to 2 minutes max. It doesn't really fit the format. And so instead you just get this kind of really reductive version of these conversations.
The lack of nuance being available in this short time frames where you have to pitch your frame doesn't really allow for the nuance that also is necessary in building solutions. And it just seems like the time frame, the time limits really inhibit any kind of generative solution-based conversation to actually happen.
Yeah, I want to come back to the whole form of cable TV, which is the soundbite, the 90-second clip, whatever. But I think this is really important, where the way that you get views is through conflict, and the easiest conflict to generate is Democrat versus Republican, or Democrat versus progressive, or Republican versus MAGA, or whatever. And there are genuinely good people trying to do their best, pundits and hosts on all of these stations. There are good people who are like the moderator we just saw on CNN and so many other people. But for the most part, the easiest thing to do day after day, hour after hour on a 24-hour news network is to just create the most base form of conflict as possible, which is, what are Democrats doing? Are Democrats winning? Are Democrats losing? Are Republicans winning? Are Republicans losing? Rather than what you would think would be the role of journalism, which was what Carlos was saying, what are the people's problems and how do you solve it? So this is a good segue to what is the purpose of television and why are we even talking about this, and the form of television. So people on the pod, people at JD know that I'm obsessed with politics in Spain. Everyone is like, we didn't know that.
Oh, we knew.
I found this quote from the former leader of a Spanish political party about TV that I wanted to read and segue into an American version of this. So he writes, "For decades, television has been the central ideological apparatus in our societies. In recent years, social networks have opened up new sites of ideological contestation, democratizing access to the public sphere, despite their unequal penetration of different strata. Television conditions and even helps to manufacture the frameworks through which people think, the mental structures and their associated values at a much higher level of intensity than the traditional sites of ideological production, family, school, religion. As far as political attitudes and opinions are concerned, TV talk shows are probably the major producers of arguments explicitly for popular use. Most of the arguments heard in bars or workplaces are generated by quote-unquote opinion makers who appear on TV and radio. Social imaginaries are clearly shaped by apparently non-ideological and apolitical formats presented as merely entertainment. The most important ideological operations are those that give the appearance of being non-ideological to notions that are perceived as common sense." So that's very academic Marxist writing for people's opinions are formed by what they consume, and there's a big entertainment factor in all of this too. Before I get to the next clip, I just wanted your reactions to what this politician is saying about the role of television.
Retweet.
Correct.
Plus.
Guys, you gotta give me some more.
I mean, the last paragraph, I was like, oh, that's Tucker Carlson, to a T. Explains to you what your ideology should be and makes you really enraged about what's going on. And I think Fox News, especially Tucker, does it better than anyone on CNN, and most people on MSNBC do it. And that's why they have more viewers. Because I think it's true the same for CNN and MSNBC as well, but do feel like there's a little less in instructing you what always your ideological view should be, because they are talking about partisan infighting, etc., whereas Tucker's educating you about what you should believe in.
I think mostly I don't know that I know of a version of Fox News for the left where those ideas are so sort of forcefully advertised and turned into entertainment.
In such a mainstream way.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Well, it's obviously not the scale of Fox News or Tucker, but I would say that there are things that Bernie posts on Instagram and social media, things that AOC posts on her Instagram, I think are also in this vein of trying to do this kind of ideological production. I think something he says is like the arguments and like debates people have at home, in the house, or at the bar, or with their family are often rehearsing things that people are consuming. I don't know. So I know, Becca, you want to talk about Drew Barrymore in a second. As a place where ideological production and entertainment coincide. But I wanted to play one more clip. So we just got like a very like academic Marxist version of what the role of television is, and I wanted to give you another clip for what the role of television is. So we're going to hear from friend of the pod, Kelly, former White House spokesperson. This is an interview with her with Trevor Noah on The Daily Show.
First of all, the president offered me the press secretary job within an hour or an hour and a half of being elected. In 2016, I said no, because he said, you'll be great at that. I'm thinking to myself, I wrote in the book, I'd be a terrible press secretary. I'm not even sure what they do. And so I didn't want a press or comms job. I took a policy job, but I kept getting pulled out to speak on behalf of the White House, on behalf of the country. And I have to tell you, people will say, how can you go up against this anchor? They ask me the same question. Why would you go on this show? Why do you deal with that anchor?
Right.
They're not fair to you. They only prefer Democrats, et cetera. And I say, look, the anchors are never really my audience. The people are the audience. There are folks out there, the forgotten man, forgotten woman, forgotten child, who would not otherwise have access to information, news they can use, facts and figures that affect their everyday lives.
I want to make a connection between the first thing I read and what Kellyanne is saying about what she's trying to do on TV, which is not speak to the anchor, but speak to the audience.
Republicans are so much better than us at this shit. It's insane. She is doing exactly that, and she does do that, and just appeals to people that she wants to appeal to, appeals to the voting base that she wants to be Donald Trump's voting base, and enrages them on certain issues, comforts them on other issues, and that is the entire tact. Instead of trying to fight with a pundit who, if we remember the era when Kellyanne was on TV more, all the pundits were just trying to be like, oh, Kellyanne, you're crazy, dismiss Kellyanne, etc., and trying to like pull fights with her like we saw in the previous CNN panels. But she's like, nope, I'm not going to fall into this. I don't really care. I'm just going to keep going on my messaging like a good comms person, and also like a classic comms person, just wanted to be in policy but had to do comms. So here we are.
Girl boss alert.
I was just going to say, Kellyanne is indeed shaping a social imaginary, manufacturing ideological frameworks. She has a whole nother segment in that clip where she's like, all I'm trying to do is say common sense things that common sense Americans understand. And I'm like, go off, queen. Okay, so one thing that I put a pin in earlier that I want to come back to is this connection between entertainment and politics. Becca, did you want to share something with us about one Senator Sanders and one...
I just want to talk about my girl, Drew Barrymore. Just kidding. It's more about Bernie Sanders than anything else. Somehow my entire YouTube algorithm is like clips from Bernie Sanders' book tour, all of his press hits. And I just think he's popping off, like everyone from like Jon Stewart to Drew Barrymore, and he's received well on every show. And I just think that if you can have this like curmudgeonly socialist old man talking to an audience of middle-aged suburban women, no shade, on Drew Barrymore's talk show, and they're into it. He's talking about the same shit that he talks about on the campaign trail, and people seem to be receiving it really well. And I guess I just attribute that to his level of authenticity, and I do actually think that that's something that progressives do really well. You had said this earlier, Waleed, the job of a Democratic pundit on TV is to just defend the Democratic Party, and I think that's something that works to the advantage of progressives, because when you are genuinely for progress, you can be actually honest about what's working and what's not, instead of being so concerned about protecting the political establishment or how your corporate overlords will respond to what you're saying on national television. And I just think that's something that Bernie Sanders is doing really well, specifically on his book tour. I truly never would have expected him to be on Drew Barrymore's talk show, and yet here we are.
Yeah, Guido has actually made this point several times where he was like, the popularity of people like Bernie and AOC reveals the weakness of the left and not the strength of the left, where it's like you have 170, I don't know how old Bernie is now, 77? Older? You have one old senator from Vermont who says a couple of things that resonate with people and goes viral in 2016 amongst millennials. And then you have a bartender who becomes a congresswoman who is also going viral amongst millennials once a month. And the fact that, you know, there are obviously other politicians as well, but like in a little bit more authenticity and like working class sentiment into our politics is not something the Democratic Party has many leaders who can do on that scale.
Yeah. Which feels crazy because to me, that's literally the easiest thing you can do is just say the fucking truth, like be fucking for real. And that's what people want.
Why isn't it as common? What do you think is...
$1 million Q, Sophie.
Okay. Copy.
You know, there's that stat where most people on TV and most people in politics are millionaires. And I think that is probably a big reason for it. I feel like one thing progressives also just struggle with is, we were talking about this earlier, but because broadcast television is so much about 90-second, 45-second debates and talking points, it's immediately a terrain that is not friendly to progressives because so much of our worldview ideology is about root causes and history and how we got here, which is not going to fit in 45 seconds. And so there's like this immediacy of what is happening in the present moment, and we don't give a shit about anything that didn't happen today. And we're like, okay, but like history is a thing. And so there's that old saying that like if you're explaining, you're losing. And like progressives, I feel like we have to explain a lot of things to get people to where we are. And I think that's one reason why we also can struggle with the medium. I don't know what you guys think.
I also, though, feel like Democrats are really bad at just being honest and naming what people are feeling. And so it's almost step 2 would be, okay, let's explain how we got here, but we're not even really doing step 1, which is acknowledging the reality of a lot of people's lives. And so it would be honestly refreshing to have more Democratic pundits, I guess, going on television and like actually understanding what day-to-day life looks like for a lot of people.
Sam, I'm going to bring you in. I feel like so many of our candidates want to give a sociological, historical explanation to how we got here. So
totally. And also, I'm also at fault in this situation too, because I'll write talking points and then I'm like, wow, I don't know how this person is going to say 3 paragraphs.
Usamah wrote me a script for a TikTok on abortion, and it was like a 20-minute script of like, here's everything you need to know about mifepristone.
I am into context, some would say. It's really, it's a struggle I have personally as a comms person, as like a progressive comms person, trying to like explain these issues that are so dismissed as simplistic, because when we as progressives put forward ideas simplistically, everyone deserves health care, Medicare for all, the response is then a question, how are we going to pay for it? What's the policy? What are these things that are so much longer than a 30-second clip? And so I think, we're kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place, and I'm always trying to figure out to what level of context do people need. And often people don't actually need that much context. People want to just hear the problems that they're having repeated back to them and be like, hey, and this is the fucking solution to it. And as much as I personally want to be like, in 2003, this is what we did, and then it led to this thing, and Barack Obama did this for 5 years, but it's just like no one gives a shit, and that is going to lose you viewers. It's going to lose everyone's engagement. And so I will out myself as someone who's historically not concise. And it's a thing that all of us in the progressive movement need to be better at doing, and not fall into the traps of when they come to us, when we're trying to be concise and try and be like, all right, well, how are we possibly going to do that? What are all these big picture questions? Just respond back in the same way they like to talk about it, which is simplistic frames of values and understanding why this is a necessity, not a questionable thing that we can or cannot do.
Yeah, and I do think there is a time and a place for that historical context that is eventually necessary as we complete our ultimate goal of onboarding liberals to the progressive movement. But yeah, just accepting that that's probably the journey starts on cable news and you're not going to get that historical. Yeah, just accepting the medium for what it is.
That's for our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, just accepting the medium for what it is. And it obviously has its limitations.
There's so many moments where I can remember Bernie like answering a question about Medicare for all. Like, how are you going to pay for it, or is this going to pass? And he'll be like, look, Jake, the healthcare system we have is corrupt. and millions of people are uninsured. That man is a master of message discipline and pivoting. Like,
it's true.
He's like, I am not speaking to you right now.
R. Kellyanne Conway.
R. Kellyanne Conway is Bernie Sanders. But it's getting back to the entertainment thing. I do think there are places in which progressives have aligned with the medium of social media and television to like insert ourselves and hijack the medium. The big one I'm thinking about is the Green New Deal, which for people who don't remember, the whole context of how it started was that there was a speaker vote and everyone was wondering if AOC was going to vote yes or no on Pelosi as speaker. And then Sunrise and AOC and JD did the sit-in. And one of the reasons the entire media was there was because they were like, oh, this means AOC is going to vote no on the speaker's vote. And the entire frame was about AOC versus Pelosi and the speaker's vote. And then you had like everyone come being like, we're all going to die. The IPCC report gives us 12 years. I think everyone who was involved in that was very like, accept the medium for what it is. The conflict is where it is. And we're going to talk about this UN report that nobody has ever heard of. That actually, like, you know, an MSNBC host once told me that when they talk about climate change, this is back in 2018, 2019, people turn off the TV or switch channel when climate change is discussed. And it was actually the AOC Green New Deal Sunrise sit-in where people did not change the channel because they were interested in the conflict of AOC versus Pelosi pulled them in. That was the bait and switch.
Interesting.
And so sometimes you got to play the game.
Stage some fights.
People are like, I don't want to hear about my own existential dread and the fate of our planet, but I will watch AOC versus Nancy Pelosi.
Maybe I'll learn something about climate change.
Exactly, celebrity deathmatch.
That makes a lot of sense. It's tough because your first urge is just, for example, if you are trying to get on TV and you ask the booker, what are my topics going to be? And they're like, we want you to talk about, you know, the Democratic fight around defund the police. And you're just like, well, I don't really want to fucking do that. And I don't want to be on this show with you because of this. And I know you're going to be an adversarial host about this. This is not going to actually be useful for, even if I do make my productive points. But like, to your point, Waleed, maybe you use those opportunities to just push forward, fuck their frame, fuck whatever they want to talk about, and just talk about what you want to talk about, period, even in hostile environments. And, you know, your point comes through. I think it's tough.
I have an unspoken theory that if you can simultaneously be the hottest and the most relatable person on the panel, you will win. And that's why
Bernie wins.
That's how we can succeed.
I mean, I did bring up the nonverbal things in the panel. So to close out, we've been very hard on cable TV, broadcast TV, but I am curious, Becca and Usamah, is there anyone you think does a good job with the medium and the limitations of it at explaining real issues? Sophie doesn't watch TV. Sophie, you want to skip? It's fine if you skip.
I'm going to press skip because I only watch the cable news that is sent to me on Slack.
I would say the first person that comes to mind is Chris Hayes, just because I do think he does a good job of talking about, especially about progressive issues in actual detail and not letting so much of interviews get into just the political street fighting of it all, but actually just having real conversations that I would actually want to fucking hear. Like, I don't give a shit, and maybe that means that the average viewer doesn't care, but I'm hoping as a primetime slot, it encourages people to engage in that kind of thing. And I would say one of the worst people on MSNBC is Joe Scarborough.
What if that was going to be my answer? No, I'm just kidding. I just want to say that when I first started at JD, I went with Waleed to the MSNBC studio, and he was going on Chris Hayes's show, and he wrote his talking points in a notes app on his phone on the train on the way to 30 Rock. And I was like, this man is fucking insane. Because Sophie, your reaction is perfect.
I'm shook.
That was when I was a junior Democratic strategist.
Now you're senior
Democratic strategist.
Now I write in Evernote.
This podcast is sponsored by Evernote.
Still on the train.
I have seen both Ali Velshi and Stephanie Ruhle do this well at times, not as consistently as Chris Hayes. I feel like he probably is the best example on cable TV. During the pandemic, particularly, I was watching a lot of broadcast news, and Stephanie Ruhle, I think, did a good job on a lot of pocketbook economic type issues about talking about workers and good framing.
Nice.
I also want to give Alex Wagner her flowers, who is back on TV, and I like a lot.
I'll give my flowers to Mehdi Hasan, who, because I think he comes from the British School of Journalism, is just, we didn't talk about this kind of stuff, but he actually asks good adversarial questions that are not partisan or not tactical, but more like, this is a problem that Americans have. What are you going to do about it? And he'll push and push and push in a way that a lot of hosts are uncomfortable with because they don't want to lose access to the guest. But
that's a dynamic we didn't really talk about.
Yeah, but in the British School of Journalism, because there's only really the BBC, they don't give a shit about access because you're forced to talk to them. So I don't know how that goes within closed doors at MSNBC, where they're like, "Maybe you need to tone it down. Like nobody wants to come on your show anymore." But I think he does a good job.
I think anyway, my principle still applies that if you're the hottest and most relatable, it doesn't matter how adversarial you are as a host, people will still want to come on your show. It works both ways. That's all I'm going to say.
Name names, Becca.
I won't do it.
All right, that's our show. Thank you, Becca, Usamah, Sophie, for joining the group chat. See y'all later.
See you on
Bye.
the block.
Bye. Rock on.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
All right, that's the show. Our mix engineer is Rocky Rousseau. Our producers on this episode were Sophie Kapp, who also appeared as a guest, Emma Desau, and myself. If you enjoyed this episode, we have a Block Doc coming out soon about the importance of publicly funded media in the face of private, for entertainment, corporate media. Special thanks to Yellow Jackets Season 2, Team Lottie. See you on the block.